Oh, okay.
Where did she come from?
What was I saying? Didn't I judge your, was it the studio competition a while back?
You did, and you did very well because you gave me. I won the colour.
Oh, so at least somebody's still talking to me. Okay, nice to be with you this evening to talk about my photography. One of my passions has been sports photography over the years. What I'm going to show you is a look into my world as a professional sports photographer for 25 years or whatever it was, something crazy like that. And how I accidentally got into it, how I never set out to be a sports photographer. I just did it for fun, and then right place, right time, right people. I was offered jobs. So that will unfold as we go through. This is called Wet and Wild 2, because Wet and Wild 1 is the original print talk, which was, I started showing many years ago. A lot of were darkroom prints. So this is, none of these are darkroom pictures. These are all digital, so they've all been taken more recently. I'm just waffling while I look for the button that says project. Now I've got share screen. Right, you are sharing screen. I will click on project. So with any luck, you can see a slide that says Wet and Wild 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, excellent. That means it's working. Okay, I got into serious photography back in the early 70s, doing the usual family stuff, and then I started doing portraits of a few weddings and bits and pieces. But my great passion back then and still is was vintage aviation photography. And this is where I learned to use big lenses and slow shutter speeds. And there's just a couple that just demonstrate the effect of slow shutter speed, panning. These are techniques that you've got to use with propeller-driven aeroplanes. And I got reasonably good at it. I felt I was quite good at it. A number of magazines used to use my stuff, and the Shutworth collection used my stuff. And it meant that I had the big lenses I needed, the experience of using them that I needed when I started looking at shooting other stuff. And one of the first sports I got involved with was grass track racing. And I'm fortunate that there's a track about 2.5 miles from where I live. And they race there regularly every year, a couple of times a year. There's a meeting there. In fact, I was there on Sunday. And it's one of those things that I thought, I love motorbikes. I've always had a passion for them. I'll go along, take some pictures. And I got chatting with some people who said, would you like to go in the middle? And I said, yes, please. So I signed the usual disclaimer. If they kill me, I mustn't go back and haunt them. Put on a high-vis vest and started shooting from track centre. And of course, you start getting a few pictures, thinking of competition, what judges might like. This guy, this was taken in 2004, and I was actually photographing him still racing on Sunday. He's grown a bit since then. Didn't do very well on Sunday, managed to fall off and injure himself. But this was a little something I just put together for a competition. And the judges thought it was great. It got action, and the red was very dramatic and dynamic. These days, if you put in a colour pop thing in the competition, most judges will go, oh yeah, I don't like this technique, it's been done to death. But this was 15, 16 years ago, and it was quite fresh back then. But I made a point of making sure the club had use of the pictures. So the next time they produced a program, they had some pictures to use, and I got invited back, and I became the regular photographer with access to Track Centre. So, and then of course people start offering to buy pictures, which is always quite nice, and magazines start offering to buy pictures, which is again rather nice. And you've got judges that look at pictures, and occasionally they'll quite like one. I called that close racing. He couldn't understand why. You can't get much closer than that, can you? I mean, the best front wheel is under his arm. If it's any closer, he's going to put the brake on for him. These guys, I mean, this was taken 15 years ago. They're still racing. They don't fit quite as well into their race suits anymore, but it's a fun sport. Lots of noise, lots of dust, lots of muck. It wasn't something that when I was shooting film, you had to be very, very cautious when you opened the back to change the film to not get the camera full of dust. Of course, that's less of a problem now when we're shooting digital, but I certainly don't go around changing lenses while I'm in these sort of conditions. Otherwise, you're going to get full of dust. I came home on Sunday about the same colour as the field there. And, so was my camera, so was my car. Everything just turns to that dusty colour. So what I'm looking for in all of my sports pictures is a sense of movement. I hate static pictures. If it's supposed to be moving, let's make it look as if it's moving. We can do that with an angle, like this is quite a dramatic angle, it's leaning. We've got all the muck coming up off the back wheel. We've got a lot of the rubbish in the background hidden. Judges hate fences and car parks and spectators and things. So if you can find a place where the dust is blowing away from you, it will do quite a good job of hiding all the stuff in the background. And so you can get a nice blurred out background. And I will look for places where the grass, as the surface wears, it all accumulates in a ridge on the outer edge of the track. And I'll watch out for riders that take a bit of a wide line, because I know if they hit that pile of dirt, it's going to go everywhere. And that makes quite a nice job of hiding the beer tent and all the people behind it. And that's done very well in well, a version of that has done very well in competition. I did modify it, added a little bit more space underneath. That one's a little bit tightly cropped. So I like to create movement where they're coming at me like this. 750th of a second will just about blur the wheel, and it will just keep the forward motion frozen. So you don't get too much blur in the figure. If you go much higher than that, if you go up to 1,000th, the wheel will be totally frozen, so you won't have movement there. I remember using a shot like this once and the judge going, oh, if you panned, you could get more movement in the wheels. I'm still working 25 years later, still trying to work out how you pan with something coming towards you, but perhaps one of you will explain that to me. Panning when they're going past, yes. And this will be taken, 70 to 200 is my favourite lens when I'm in the middle of the track. This would be taken at probably about 100 mil, and it would be taken at about a 30th of a second. And once you perfect the technique of the slow speed pan, you can create lots of movement in the wheels, in the ground they're going over, fences and stuff in the background all becomes blurred. But if you're fairly steady with your pan, the bits that aren't moving or that aren't moving at a different speed will come up fairly sharp. The problem is on rough ground, heads tend to be nodding up and down and bodies vibrate. But this one will work. And when it does work, it is very effective. I use a strong crop sometimes as well. The last one was a letterbox crop. This one, I cropped out all that I don't need, because a letterbox crop like this, a panoramic crop like this, is more dynamic than a standard 35mm shape. You don't have to show everything. So I crop out where I don't need stuff to make more drama. And with the sidecars, of course, they're going bats out of hell and sliding sideways through the bends, lots of muck coming up and lots of concentration in the faces. So that's why I've been quite successful in competition, despite the legs and fences in the background. But I will always include bits of spectators. I will include the pits. I will include the car park, because I don't want to look like one guy on a motorbike going round on the field. I want it to be obvious that it's a competition going on, particularly when you're getting into magazines. They want to see that this was a race meeting and there were lots of people there. It's exciting, and it's not just, although I'm only showing one machine in many of the shots, they want to get the sense that there are people there watching. I like this one. I love this little chap in the background watching all on his own. His parents seem to have wandered off and left him there, and he's looking on in wonderment at these things. I'm not about to be run over. They are drifting sideways. They are hopefully going to survive, so they must have gone past me. I've only had one actually lose control and head towards me at a rather high rate of knots, but I was paying attention and managed to run out the way. Generally speaking, if a motorcycle and sidecar is heading towards you, run to the motorcycle side, not the sidecar. Sorry, to the sidecar side. They can't steer into the sidecar. They'll always steer away from the sidecar. So if you go the other side of it, you should be relatively safe unless it flips over. I like this one. The bright colours work great. And I've just slightly toned down the colours in the background, so they're not as obtrusive. There's still a sense of people watching and lots of movement. I do, as I said, I love to create movement. So this again is probably a 60th of a second, maybe 125th, certainly no faster than that. This one would have been a slightly higher shutter speed, probably a 250, because there is a component of the going sideways faster that they're also heading towards. So the slightly higher shutter speed stops that movement. And I like what's going on in the background with all the mud flying. And I love this track. This is down near Huntingdon, this particular field that they use. And that portion, as the public aren't allowed in there, there is no access. So there's no fencing and there's no barriers or anything. There's no rubbish down there at all. It's just open countryside behind. So it always used to be a great field to get into. And so most of those have been taken over the last, when did I go digital? 2001. So they're all digital. Some of them are taken. The last race meeting I did was October 2019. And then we were allowed out to play this weekend. We were allowed to race, allowed spectators in. And this last one, this was actually taken on Sunday. And I surprised myself. I still remembered which way round the camera went. It just felt so good to be back at it. Anyway, Grass Track led me through. I met a lot of people involved with Grass Track and with Speedway. And one of the young lads that used to ride Grass Track, his dad ran Boston Speedway Club. And they invited me along to go and photograph Boston Barracuda Braves, who used to race at Kings Lynn because Boston Council shut down the Boston Speedway track. So Friday nights it was a trip over to Kings Lynn and get to shoot at Speedway. Very exciting, great fun. Again, lots of noise. No wonder I'm deaf. Again, working track centre. You've got access, I've got access that the average club photographer hasn't got. But there's just a couple here I can show you that were taken from within the spectators enclosure. So if you've got if you take a little bit of care choosing your position, and you've got a fairly big lens, this would be on about 400, you can shoot down across the barrier and get reasonable shots from outside. The great disadvantage with the track at Kings Lynn is that as the sun goes down, particularly this time of year, the sun sets at the end of the first straight. So for about 15 minutes around sunset, they have to abandon racing because you can see the shadows there. So bright, they just can't see where the bend is. So they stop racing. We all get time for a cup of tea. It's one of my favourites. It's very rare to get a good group like that, but I'd always try and get, from the point of view of selling to the magazine, to Speedway staff, they would like to try and get several different riders in one shot rather than individual shots. They wanted, ideally, somebody from each of the two teams in the meeting. So here we managed to get a couple from Boston. I can't remember the other one. I think might have been Mildenhall. They were great, fierce rivals. Shooting from inside the track, not too difficult in normal lighting conditions, but the season tends to be sort of September through till March, April time. So as the year goes on, you start working in almost in darkness and working under the floodlights. So this is, we've still got daylight. This is planned a 30th of a second on the 200. Loads of movement, loads of blur. It's a shot that the club used on the programmes a number of times because he was their top rider for a while. But then when it comes to shooting under the floodlights, it becomes somewhat more challenging because, for one thing, I'm shooting towards them. The floodlights are all raised outside the track, so I'm shooting into the light. So we tend to use flash from the inside of the track. It's allowed, but outside the track it's not. I don't know why, but I suppose if everybody starts banging away with flash guns, there'd probably be two of us in the centre and we'd be allowed to use flash. And the trick is balancing the flash output with the ambient light. So flash is going to freeze all the movement, but if I underexpose the flash a bit and try and balance it with the ambient, make it a reasonable degree of movement, but still retain some sharpness. Some of them work quite well. That one, the flash is perhaps a little stronger than I would like, but it works. And again, he was the #1 rider for whoever that team was. I can't remember who it was again. So the magazine will use that. But trying to get several, always challenging. You've got 4 laps basically. You've got 4 riders going to go past you 4 times, so long as they don't fall off. So your best chance of getting a decent grouping is as they come into the first bend, and they will manage to get numbers 1 and 2 from both the home team and the visitors, and that's exactly the sort of stuff that the magazines want to see. I don't think I've ever used that in competition. I'll probably have to just tidy that little white line up there a bit, but maybe I'll give it a try one day just for fun. But magazines don't, certainly Speedway magazine doesn't pay a great deal. I used to make more money selling pictures to the riders, so I'd all try and get quite dramatic shots of individual riders and try and portray the movement, try and get them looking mean and aggressive and what have you, and then they'd end up buying them. I was quite pleased with this one. Again, I've really turned the flash down. I've just given it enough to give a tiny bit of fill. I love the sense of movement there and the fringes on his jacket to add to that sense of movement. And I was very pleased with it. Speedway Star said no, it was too artistic. It wasn't quite what they were looking for the magazine, but he thought it was great, and it has done well in competition. So it's funny how different criteria for different things. Picture editors will look for something entirely different to what a judge will look at when they're judging competition. So quite like that grouping, and that's going to work better for judges because they've got 3 in, and it's got red in, it's got all the things, and it's got a little line coming out the corner. It's a bit cliche, but it's all the things that judges look for, isn't it? And yeah, sure enough, it did quite well. So there's plenty of movement. It's got somewhere to go. It fits all the rules that camera club judges seem to like. So yeah, I was quite pleased with that one. Anyway, that's sort of motorcycling for the moment. Grass Track Speedway was my first introduction, if you like, to starting to earn a little bit of money from my photography. And at a point before I went digital, we'd have to go back now to mid-90s when I discovered jet skis. I shot them for a couple of years just for fun, and again, I was lucky. There was a lake near me. I went down one day to try and find some wildlife to shoot for a nature competition, and then discovered jet skis, and that kind of changed my life because I kept going back, kept sharing the pictures, riders kept buying the pictures. The clubhouse manager, or the guy that ran the ski lake, we became quite good friends. Every time I did a print run, I'd give him some for the wall. And one day, a young lady down there came up and said, "I understand you're responsible for these pictures." I said, "I'm the editor of Jet Skier magazine. Would you like to work for us?" So I sort of said, "Yeah, let me think about it. Yes, please." Didn't take a great deal to persuade me to work from as a freelance photographer, photographing all the racing. And so that became a regular, about 12 times a year, about 12 events a year. I would go off and photograph them all over the UK. Again, I was starting to get stuff like this, which judges like. The magazine was using, the riders were buying them, and it was really great fun. It was now becoming quite hectic. Weekends were pretty full with Speedway on a Friday night, and then probably a whole weekend of jet skiing, or maybe just a Sunday, and maybe Saturday doing grass track, or trying to fit everything in was becoming quite difficult. But it was great fun. So I was getting paid to do what I love doing. You know, I'm taking pictures like this, which are doing quite well in competition, getting lots of exposure in the magazine, and this has had a few 20s in various different competitions, and here I'm going completely the opposite way. To the motorbikes, everything's shot with slow shutter speed, panning. Here with the jet skis, I'd go the other way. I'd go for nice high shutter speed. This is probably 2,000th of a second, because I want to freeze all this spray. I want it to fill in. I don't want too much background behind. I just want this sort of explosion of power and colour leaping out of the spray. And I think it works quite well. That's done well in competition. And this one, I think, made a double page in the magazine, because it worked quite well. I've cropped it down. You can see it's not full. But the original had a bit more spray this side, which was great, because they could put all the words in there, so half the article went over that side. Which, when you're shooting the magazines, you've got to think about: have I left room? You know, for judges, is there room for it to move in? With picture editors, is there room for me to put text? Is there room for the story if it's going on the front? I don't think I've put any cover pictures in it. I think I've done all landscape shape. But if you're shooting, I'd always look for one or two verticals, but you've got to leave enough space to get the magazine title in, the date and contents and all the other rubbish that they've got on the front. But this is the sort of image that I particularly enjoy. So I would, when I would turn up at a lake, you've got one not far from you. You're up Doncaster way, aren't you? There's what's the lakes in Doncaster called?
Seven Lakes sometimes do it, which is Kroll.
It'll come to me. It's behind one of the hotels, and is it Tyrone Lakes?
Durham Hall.
Is that Doncaster?
Yeah, it's by Lindome Prison.
Yeah.
What was the RAF base? It's now a prison.
A few years we've had rounds of the British Championships there. I don't think, well, there haven't been any rounds for the last year, but that's that's on your doorstep. If you get a chance, if you're going to do this sort of stuff, spend a little bit of time looking. Where's the water going? When they hit the bend, where's the spray going to go? Where's the wind? Where's the light? Same if you're doing motorcycling. You know, where's the wind? Where's the dust going to go? Preferably away from you. And here with the spray, preferably away from you. Otherwise, you won't get a picture of a rider. So it's worth spending a little time actually exploring the track. Watch the practice and get an idea of where they're going, where the turns are, which way they're going around the buoys, where the water's going to go, and all that sort of stuff. I've seen so many people they just go to the first bend and you know, don't realise that they're in probably the worst place. Judges don't like buoys. They look at this and go, I don't like that big red blob. If the big red blob wasn't there, it's like saying, oh, I don't like the fence this horse is jumping over. If the fence wasn't there, the horse wasn't jumping. If the buoy wasn't there, they wouldn't be turning around like that. So I get a bit upset with that sort of comment. But I enjoy this this sort of head-on shot, which again, it's the riders love it. They're going to buy it. They look big, they look aggressive. They're going to pay good money for it. The magazines love it, and some judges love it. This one did very well. It got into the PAG. I think it was a print. I think got into the PAG print exhibition a few years ago. Very simple, very little colour. It's almost monochrome, and they just got those couple of little hints of red. And again, it was looking for where the spray's going. Behind it are a load of caravans in a building that because I timed it as he's coming out of the around the hole, accelerating it up, lots of spray. It's hidden all the rubbish in the background. And this one again, it's I've managed to crop out, but there is a house behind there, but it's fairly well hidden. And to get that, I'm actually laying flat on my stomach out on a pontoon, which is bouncing up and down on the waves, trying to handhold a 500 mil, lining this shot up because he's 50 yards, maybe 75 yards from the finish line. And so long as he crosses the line still in front, he's going to win this 2006 British Championship. And I really wanted this, the full version of it made the magazine front cover. You can see I've cropped space off the top, but I wanted this because it was going to be his first championship win. So it's thinking about what you want, where am I going to be, how am I going to get the shot, and hopefully it all comes together. And in this case, it did, because his closest rival is still just in the shot. And so it sort of emphasises the fact that he's winning, he's taking the championship, and he's looking straight. You probably can't see his eyes on here, but he's actually looking straight into the camera as he comes round. He knows he's won. Even if he falls off, he can probably swim across the line to win the championship. This is one of my favourites. I love this because of the expression on the guy's face. And you can see his eyes. And again, with judges, oh yeah, I like that, but you can't see his eyes because most of the time they're wearing dark or reflective visors, and you can't actually see the face. But in this one, it's like you've got eyes on the ski. You've got that aggressive-looking face on the front of the ski, and then you can see into his eyes. You can see the determination. Just that splash of light just got in there on the tip of his nose, which I like. And of course, I'm really, really happy with it. And he had a big print. I thought I'll put it in the competition. You can get the judge as well. Yeah, it'd be all right if it got that big red blob. But, I think I might have eventually done a copy without the big red blob. But I like it. It gives, for me, it gives balance to the picture. Okay. One that I knocked down to, I can't find the colour one of this. I've changed the monochrome one. This is the girl that initially approached me back in '96, the editor of Jet Ski magazine. We became quite good friends, and she's still involved with racing even now. The magazine is defunct, it went bust about 13 years ago. But, the colour version of this is probably my most widely published image, in as much as she was at the time sponsored by one of the biggest accessory distributors, and they purchased the colour version of this to use on the front cover of their catalogue, which is distributed worldwide. I don't know how many, 500,000 or so copies were printed. So it was one that I was quite thrilled with. I mean, I love the action in the picture, the way she's coming out the bend and the water is just all wrapped around her, and the look of determination in her face and in her eyes, just enough light getting in there. So, I can't remember. I think I was doing a monochrome talk, and I thought, I'll try it as monochrome and see if it works. And I loved how it worked. So, two for the price of one. But yeah, my most published. It's always nice when you get a shot that you like, judges like, the rider likes, and then somebody pays you lots of money to use it as well. This is a bit of fun. This is taken up at Tattershall Lakes, which was almost the spiritual home of jet ski racing in the UK. This young lady, she was at the end of this year, she won the British Ladies Championship. But the idea was that she wanted some stuff for her sponsors, and racing pictures. They're all wearing helmets and you can't see the faces. So she said to me, "Can we have a bit of a session together, see if we can get some pictures without the full race gear on?" So I'm in a wetsuit. I'm in the lake. I'm sort of up to my chin. Camera and flash gun in a housing, and she's going round and round. This is taken at about 35mm on a 28-135, and she's just riding around me in circles, trying not to run over me, while I try and get something that works. And she loved it. I mean, it's a good few years ago now we did this. It was great fun. I've done quite a lot of this stuff, being in the water with different riders. And I dug it out a couple of years ago. I thought, let's try it on a judge. I don't suppose it would do any good, but yeah, they were very enthusiastic. It was quite nice. I must have been laying on the bank to have got this. I really didn't consider the thought that I might actually have been in the water. Okay, how am I doing for time? Can I do a few more? Okay, that's wet. Let's get wild again. Let's get dry and get dusty again. A lot of the jet ski riders, they're complete adrenaline junkies, and quite a lot of them are involved in motocross as well. Excuse me. So one day, one of them said, "Oh, we're racing near Peterborough. Do you want to come down and we'll get you a pass and go and take some pictures?" So I went down and they introduced me to the guy who was running it, and he knew me from grass track. It's a fairly small world. "Oh, Dave, thank God you're here. We need somebody to take some good pictures." And so I became the club's photographer, official photographer. So I've been doing about 20 years, I think. So now my weekends are getting really full because I'm shooting grass track, motocross, speedway, and jet ski. I'm trying to fit them all in. Fortunately, the seasons don't completely overlap, and some Sundays there'll be no jet skiing, but there'll be motocross. So different set of challenges, but back to similar challenges to the grass track, in as much as there's a lot of muck, there's a lot of dust. I got possibly more access than you would get now if you went to a motocross track. Back then, they weren't quite so iffy about allowing the general public or club photographers to wander around, but health and safety have just got silly now. So similar technique, big lens, 750th of a second, got some movement. Use the dust is hiding all the muck. Or go wide angle. This again is about 35 mil. I'm actually kneeling on the track. This is on top of a tabletop jump, and I'd spoken to the riders that I was going to do this and try this style shot with. You only do it with the first 3 or 4 in each class, the ones that you know are going to hit the hump and clear it. So it's not too unsafe for me to be in this position looking up at them, and they know I'm going to be there. So we'll do the first 2 or 3 riders over, and then I'll get back out of the way. So I'm not suggesting you try this, because if you get killed and I get sued, I won't be happy. I didn't say do it. But it's quite dramatic. I love this. I thought I'll put it in competition, and what did I call it? Something like the Beast Aloft. And the judge didn't understand it. He didn't understand 666, the number of the beast, so he obviously wasn't an Iron Maiden fan. But his mum bought us a big 3-foot or 2-foot poster of that to go on the office wall. And this young man, this one goes back a bit. He was about 8 or 9 there. He's in his 30s now, and he's still racing. So it gets in the blood. And again, it's walking around the track. Where's the wind? Where's the dust? Where's the light? Where's the sun going to move as the day progresses? I don't want to be where all that dust is going to blow, and I want to be able to get a good view of the track as they're coming over a series of jumps. I can see as the helmets pop up, so I can get the timing right. For the technical, yes, I do use autofocus. I use predictive autofocus, and as soon as I've got this shot, I'm going to be repositioning the lens. I'm going to be allowing it to start to focus on this helmet as it comes up, and I know he's going to track up and over towards me. So my aim was to get a saleable shot of every rider pretty much every lap, so that if they're going to do 5 laps in this race, I've got 5 potential shots to sell them, and then I'll probably have 1 or 2 that will do magazines, and I've got 1 or 2 which will do fairly well in competition. The print of that did quite well in competitions. Conditions changed quite dramatically. Out on the fens around here, around Peterborough, where they used to race, it was either, if it was dry, it was like orange talcum powder. If it was wet, it was like black porridge. And that's the one time I really hated it, because you get one shot out of each lap, because by the second lap you couldn't tell who they were. They'd be absolutely covered in mud. The numbers would all be covered. Their faces would be obscured. You wouldn't have a clue who these mud creatures were. So you have a lot less potential for sales. Nice images, lots of mud flying. It looks exciting. Lots of action. But by the next lap, I'm not going to have a clue who they are. So I prefer the dust, although it is challenging. That fine orange dust gets places you wouldn't imagine you even had places. I have a Sigma 50 to 500 mm lens. The inside of the front element of the lens is about this colour. It's got so much dust in it. It's got a built-in sort of warm, soft filter effect now. One day I might get it repaired, but I think it paid for itself. But it does, even though he's coming straight at me and I'm using a high shutter speed, all that dust flying and the stones and things flying up, that's what creates the movement and creates the action in the picture. So I quite like that effect. It definitely says there's something going on, and it can even get more extreme. I think I called this one Dirty Beast, and this one the judge did understand. It was a different judge. He got the 666 connection. And again, I think this one, his mum had a huge print done off it. I can't remember, I've got it printed now, but she said, can you get me something really big? I want about 6 foot tall. It was to go in the garage. His dad ran a garage that sponsored his racing. So, yeah, quite a bit out of that one. That's quite nice. And it's hiding all the rubbish. But you've got to think about where's all that dust going. You don't want to be stood in it. Nice sometimes if you can get more than one rider in the frame, because it does again suggest that there is a competition rather than just somebody messing about on a bike. So from this shot, yeah, I've got 2 people will probably buy it. Both of them quite like their position. They look as if they're quite high up, and this one, it's worked quite well in that there is definitely a sense of competition, but one rider is very definitely in the front. I think that one's done quite well in competition. 3 and red, it all seems to work quite well. Yes, I remember this day incredibly well. It was about 28 degrees, and you lather yourself up with sun cream, and then all that dust sticks to you, and you go home looking like something creature from the Black Lagoon. The first thing you do is to clean the camera with I used to use a big soft paintbrush and a can of compressed air to clean all the muck and dust off the outside before I even considered opening inside to take cards out or to take the lens off, because you don't want all that very fine dust getting inside. But it makes for a dramatic picture with the sun coming through it. There's another one from the same place. You see how fine that dust is. Absolutely, yeah. You get a bit of rain on it, and it just turns. It can go from dust like that to this sort of porridge in a matter of 10 minutes. Completely changes, and everybody starts disappearing. It can be fun. So I would have, at some point during the day, I would station myself. I'd know sort of by mid-afternoon the light's going to be in the right place for me to stand at the bottom end of this jump and isolate the riders that are coming up and over. And the challenge from this is that you don't actually get to see them because they're approaching from behind the tabletop jump. You can just hear the engine, and I learned to judge the engine note as they hit the bottom of the ramp, they rev, and the helmet would pop in to one viewfinder, and just managed to get it lined up, get it focused, press the button, and then be down again. But the riders got to know where I was going to be once they'd spotted the fact that I was there and what I was doing. They'd start coming over the hill and doing these tricks. I always felt a little bit guilty for the ones that ended up falling off because they were doing silly things. Well, I didn't tell them to, so I'll just take the pictures and let them pick themselves up at the end. So again, headed straight at me, 750th of a second. I'm just getting some movement in the front wheel there. Again here, I think this was the one where Judge said, if you pan more, it would give it more blur. I'm still working on that one. But even the little ones, he's probably only 2 foot off the ground, but because I've isolated, I've removed the ground, he looks as if it's a huge way up. So he thinks it's wonderful. He said, Mum, I really must have that picture on my bedroom wall because I look brilliant. And so Mum buys it, and then Granny has to have a copy as well, and then the other Granny has to have a copy. I always found photographing the younger riders far more profitable. I think the one behind in orange was on another motorbike and wasn't riding piggyback. So sometimes they just you get this weird juxtaposition where things look a little bit odd. But, it's quite fun. And then you try different things. You try getting down low and getting an entirely different angle, and using the shapes and the colours and the action. I'm going to do this into the first lap where they haven't had time to spread out yet. So, you plan this sort of shot on the basis of, if I do this at lap 3, they're going to be spread out. So I'll get in position to do it as they come off the start line. They'll get half a lap in, and everybody's still tight together, and there's lots of action, lots of jockeying for position. Okay, a couple more motorcycles, and then we'll have a quick tea break if that's okay. These next 2 I took, I think it's the same rider actually. I went down to Essex and for the British Championships, the sidecar championships. Great fun. If you keep an eye on the motocross websites and find out where it's happening once we're allowed out to play again. This is just an entire day of motocross sidecar outfits going around and trying to spend as much time in the air as possible. Very colourful, lots of action. Nice that you've got the rider and the passenger, so there's an extra element to make the pictures exciting. Here we're back to the slow shutter speed, probably a 60th of a second to get the blur, and then same outfit, more or less the same position, but I've just turned 90 degrees and got them coming over the jump through the trees towards me. And I like that. There's none of the usual clutter that you get on these courses, none of the tapes, nobody in high-vis vests or anything like that. It's just this outfit surrounded by trees, and the colours just, for me, just work really well. So I will leave it there for a tea break, and we will return to some.
Okay. We'll go for part 2 then.
Come on, project.
We can see it now.
Right, we should. For some reason, this program goes back to the beginning when I start projecting again. Okay, moving on to one of the most exciting jobs I had when I was working for Jet Ski magazine was they asked me at very short notice, would I be willing to go out to Gibraltar to photograph the, it was a finals of the World Offshore Powerboat Racing Championships, because a group of the UK jet ski racers had been invited out to do demonstration races amongst the powerboats. So I said, yeah, I haven't got a passport, but if I can get it organised in time, I'll go. So I had no idea really what I was letting myself in for. Flew out to Gibraltar on the Thursday, was met by a driver holding up sign that said Jet Skier magazine, and discovered that I was one of only 3 official reporters that had been invited out by the Ministry of Tourism and Sport to cover this event. And I'd been put up in the best hotel on the Rock. The other 2 I was introduced to. One was from Sports Finance Illustrated or something like that. He hadn't got a clue what the racing was about. He was just there to report on the financial impact of the event on the whatever you call Gibraltar. Not an island, but whatever. And the other guy was from Motorboat and Yachting Monthly, and he hadn't even got a camera. He said he'd drawn the short straw, didn't want to go. So I was the only one that actually knew anything about racing and photography and what have you. So I virtually had the event to myself. We had access to everywhere, interviewing the drivers. We had the use of this is taken from the Harbour Masters high-speed launch that they normally use for chasing drug smugglers across to the African coast, but we had the use of it for the weekend. And this is one of the smaller classes, and we're chasing them around. These are doing about 70 knots. We're doing very similar, and I'm trying not to fall off the back, trying to handhold a 500mm lens. So it was an interesting challenge, but it was huge fun. That's the coast of North Africa in the background. And this was the first event I'd shot on a digital SLR. So I went out not quite sure whether it was going to be up to the job. So I shot quite a lot side the magazine and did some test work with the original Canon D30 or 30D, whatever it was called, the entire 3 megapixels. Sounds laughable now, doesn't it? But it did the job and convinced the editor that I could stop wasting film and start shooting digital. So we'd go out each morning and chase these powerboats around. Had an absolute whale of a time and some fairly serious partying at night. And in the middle of it, the jet skiers would go out and do their little demonstration things. So I was taken to dinner, or to lunch rather, with the Minister of Tourism for Gibraltar. We were taken a private conducted tour of the Rock and all the tunnels and the military installation, the World War II installations under. Absolutely fascinating. A lot of bits we got to see the normal tourists don't. Introduced to the Gibraltar apes as well. So it was really quite a special weekend. I had a great time. I wrote an article for the Gibraltar Minister of Tourism and Sport, sold them pictures. I did an article for Jet Skier magazine. I did an article for their sister magazine, Powerboat and Rib magazine. The Motorboat and Yachting Monthly decided they really should have had some pictures, so they bought some of my pictures. And so did Sports Finance, whatever this thing is called. The guy hadn't even gone out with a camera. So all in all, it was a great fun, very profitable weekend. The only disappointment in the entire weekend was I should have been in that helicopter because it was a Spanish helicopter. And it was one of those weekends where Spain and Gibraltar weren't talking. the pilot wasn't allowed to land in Gibraltar airspace to pick me up. So I had to make do with just chasing around in the high-speed launch. But I look at that now and think, oh, that would have been quite magic to be hanging out the door of the helicopter taking pictures of these amazing things. By the time we're up to this class, these are the virtually the Formula One of powerboat racing. These things are doing best part of 100 mile an hour on water, and absolutely phenomenal to watch and be a part of. We're chasing. We're probably doing 60 knots. It really does shake every bone in your body as you go over the waves. What the hell it's like in those sports boats, I don't know. But it was difficult lighting, very, very contrasting. And of course, you can't say, can you go the other side? So I've got better lighting. You have to put up with what's there. But I got enough for, as I say, a number of articles and a number of images that did quite well in competition. The following year, the magazine got an invite to go back and do it again. And my editor said, you had too much fun last time, I'm going this time. And he went, and it rained all weekend. So I thought, that just served him right for taking the job away from me. But, one of the most exciting things that I did for the magazine was going out to do that. Possibly almost equally exciting was an event in the UK up in Lancashire. And again, it was fairly short notice. Would I go and photograph and do a report on these things? It's called jet sprint racing. Those of you that watch Sky Sports may be aware of it. It used to be shown on Sky Sports. It's basically a sport from Australia and New Zealand. These boats have giant jet ski engines in. They're around 12 litre, they're around 1,000 horsepower. They run on methanol and big V8s, and they're absolutely phenomenal. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and stuff like that. And they're running about 18 inches of water. The sport evolved from the guys that were working out in the outback on the rivers in New Zealand and Australia, where there were gravel extraction. So in the lunch breaks, in order to get there, they use these jet boats because there's no propellers to foul on the shallow water. In the lunch breaks, they start racing. And it's developed into an international sport. And they brought half a dozen of the boats over to the UK to do a demonstration weekend. And I was asked to go up and do the report. So when I got there, I was introduced to the boss. And he said, oh yeah, Dave Stewart, that's good. You're number 6. What do you mean I'm number 6? He said, you'll be the 6th one to go out. And they strapped me in this boat and took me out for 3 laps of the course. It was the biggest adrenaline rush of my entire life. I was sure I was going to die. I only got to look at these pictures now and the grin spreads across my face again. It's just such a memorable experience riding in it. Made some good pictures. We've done quite well in competition. Obviously, I've got a couple of articles out of it. Again, both jet skiers that I worked for, they were interested because they're giant jet skis, giant jet engines in. And Sport Button Group, which is a sister magazine, they used the article as well. And at the time, the guys that were running it, they said, right, well, the idea of this weekend was to try and introduce the sport to this country, get some promotions and some sites involved. And had it come to this country, I would have been the UK's official photographer. But unfortunately, nobody decided to take it on. if you get a chance to watch it on the television, just give it a quick watch. It's pretty damned exciting. Only one boat on the water at any one time. The water's a foot to 18 inches deep. An average lap of the course is under a minute, 45 to 50 seconds. And in that period, they will do at least 30 turns of more than 90 degrees. So it is full on, absolutely amazing. 4 or 5 Gs in the turns that go round so hard, and kicks up a beautifully clean hull. There's no water coming off the front. Everything is thrown out the back. When everything's going well, it looks really nice. When it all goes wrong, it starts to get a bit exciting. You can see the size of that engine there. Look at that, absolutely staggering. And some nice tight shots. These are done quite well in competition because you can see their faces. But when they strap me in, because the guy in the passenger seat is usually chosen to be small and light and nimble, and his job is to learn the way around the course. He's given half an hour before the race to learn what they call the rotation. So I had to borrow the fireproof race suit from the guy that usually navigated, and he was half my size. So tried to get into it. It was quite exciting, quite interesting. So we've got to try and get it done up, is it? Because if the methanol catches fire, you won't see it. You'll just smell your flesh burning. I thought, well, that's encouraging. Do I really want to do this? But that's the passenger's job, is to say, turn left here, right there, 90 degrees around there, 180 degrees here. Great fun. And that was the next time that boat went out after I'd got out of it. And it looks as if it's doing all right there, but this is the next couple of frames. It all got slightly out of control, but it didn't flip, it didn't roll. Sometimes you see them on the actual racing where they hit the bank and go up like a guiding missile. And just to prove I was actually in the boat, that's the view from the passenger seat, and it looks incredibly calm. I thought it was going to be, I'm going to get a really dramatic picture. We're going to go hurtling off around this track, and there's going to be spray flying everywhere. Well, there was, but it's all at the back. No spray in the front at all. So not very dramatic, but look at that. Wow. Nearly 20 years ago. I'd love to go and do it again. Fantastic. Anyway, so that was another great fun job that I almost said no to when they said, will you go and do it? It was actually the weekend of my birthday. And my family was saying, oh, Dan, go, celebrate your birthday. No, money to be made, pictures to be taken for another birthday next year. Right, staying wet, but a couple of slightly different things here. This is I did about 3 of these events. Again, it was somebody I knew. I think it was through motocross. No, it wasn't. It was through jet ski. Somebody I knew through jet skiing was into this 4x4 off-road malarkey, and he said, "Oh, do you want to come down? This is in November. It's cold. It's wet. It's miserable." I don't know anybody other than Scott. He said, you might sell a few pictures. Well, he was right. I ended up selling quite a lot. I got quite a few that did well in competition. I love this shot. I mean, these guys, they are laughing like hyenas because their windscreen has just fallen out just before they drove into this lake, and the car just filled with water, and they're drowned. And then laughing like maniacs, and it just they thought it was brilliant. Yeah, they had a copy. Judges have quite liked it. This one's done quite well. I'm using the high shutter speed this time. I'm trying to create dramatic images, lots of splashing, lots of they're not actually going that fast. So if you use the fastest shutter speed, the water creates the action and the movement for you. This is one of my favourites. It's just so much mud. It's just flying everywhere. But I managed to stay reasonably clean and dry. I've twisted the camera. I've probably fallen over at the time. I'm not one for, oh, I must have the horizon straight. If it makes a bit more dramatic impact, then I'll angle the camera. I try and get the timing so the things are doing something. I hate static pictures. I'm judging, don't show me sports pictures where there's no movement. They hurl these things into fairly deep areas of water. And here they go again. Still got no windscreen. They just don't care, these guys. On Scott, the guy I mentioned at the beginning, he managed to plant his Land Rover into about 6 foot of water and had to be towed out. So he didn't have the best of days, but I got an invite to go back anytime I like. I've only done, I think I've done 3 of them now. But, maybe I'll look out for them again next winter. Okay, something completely different that took me really out of my comfort zone. I've just got a few of them. Something I'd never been involved with, other than I had a bride who decided she was going to ride her horse to church. That was my first experience of shooting a horse. And one day a couple of years after I'd done a wedding, she said, oh, I'm riding in a competition up the road. Their usual photographer's sick. Will you come? Can you arrange to bring a printer? Can you shoot and print on site? So I said, yes, all right then. And I grabbed somebody to come and work the printer for me and thought, how much different can it be to motorbikes going over jumps and things? So this was my first attempt at equine photography. And I just put 1 or 2 in that I think have worked quite well. I know enough from when I'm judging horse jumping pictures that you want the ears up and you want the horse looking alert, and the rest of it, and the rider's eyes concentrated on where they're going next. So she thought it was great. This was a girl that commissioned me. She thought it was brilliant. The place looked at my work and said, do you want to become our regular photographer? And I looked at my calendar and said, no, I can't do it. But it was quite a fun weekend. And I just grabbed 1 or 2 that caught my attention as I went through when I was printing. I thought, well, I might use them in competition. I think they're quite fun. And I think I did a panel recently of some that said yes and some that said no. That one's fairly content. He's going over. That one really doesn't want to go over the jump. He said no, fairly definitely. And another one that is definitely going for it. It was difficult place to shoot. There was so many old sheds and signposts and things in the background. Difficult to get stuff that I would happily put in competition. But those didn't work too bad. So I did 1 other event there. It's not something I've gone back to in any degree at big time. I just had to say no, too much other stuff going on. Where are we now? Mablethorpe Beach Racing. How did I get to know them? I was judging somewhere, Lincoln, I think, and I saw some pictures from the Mablethorpe Beach Racing. I thought, oh, this is quite fun. So I went along one Sunday. And lo and behold, the first person I walked into was a guy that I knew from Speedway. And he said, oh, let me introduce you to John that runs all this. I'm sure he'll be happy to let you go track centre. And that was 2002, and I think I'm still their official race photographer. Well, obviously there's been no racing due to COVID. But this is on the main beach at Mablethorpe. Runs from mid-October through to March. Depending on tide, it's usually once a fortnight, and it's great fun. It can be incredibly cold. Early morning on a Sunday in January, stood on Mablethorpe Beach, you can feel the wind coming all the way from Siberia, but it does make for some good pictures. And this is back to using the very slow shutter speed, back to my favourite lens, the 200 2.8, and I love that lens, and I love to use what as far open as I can. I like a very restricted depth of field, even when I'm shooting low, slow speed. With the 2.8, you can still shoot at f4 or something like that, get a lovely shallow depth of field. And there's a couple here where I've managed to get several riders in. I love this one. I love the fact they're so tight, but they're just, you can just separate the three front wheels, the three mud guards, the three helmets. And I love the sense of close racing there. It's done fairly well in competition. This one I love even more. The sparkle from the sun, the low sun coming through, all the spray coming off the bikes. And I thought, oh, that might do all right in competition. And the judge looked at it. He looked at all those splashes of light and the spray coming off around the bikes, and he said, oh, so that's the worst case of oversharpening I've ever seen. Look at all those artifacts you've got around the machine. He didn't understand it was actually water and spray. Never mind. Can't please them all the time. But I had a pretty good business going with one or two magazines, buying some of the motorcycle magazines, and sold no end to the riders. So for a number of years, it was nobody else had got the equipment to be doing this sort of stuff, or very few people had, or the willingness to stand out in snow and sleet and rain. It looks quite pleasant there. It's relatively sunny, but days like that where I'm as wet as they are, and the rain's running down the inside of the waterproof jacket, you think, oh, only another 3 hours to go before I can go home. But on the whole, it was worth it to suffer from my art. So I say most of these are taken track centre, which there used to be a degree of access to other photographers until a few started being stupid and wandered around on the track whilst the race was still on, and causing racing to be stopped. And a party from now, what was it? One of the, I'm sure it wasn't Rolls Royce or somebody like that. One of the big Midlands clubs. They came down. They spent Saturday shooting the seals up at Dunham, and Sunday they thought, oh, we'll go and have a look at the beach. And they formed a wall of tripods on the outside of Bend 3, thinking that would be absolutely fine to stand there. They wouldn't be in anybody's way. Gave no thought to the fact that if anybody falls off on this bend, where are the motorbikes going to go? Straight where they were standing. They're very much stricter now about allowing photographers out. But that one is actually taken from the promenade. With a big enough lens, you can shoot from the promenade. Lovely sky, 30th of a second. Get it right, everything is sharp. He was actually 66 years old, and the number on his bike was his age. And he was a lovely old guy. He gave up racing into his 70s. Another shot of him whizzing past his old BSA. Sometimes head on, sometimes side on. Don't see the quads there now. There used to be quads and motorbikes, but they seem to have died out. So, same technique works all the time, doesn't it? The slow, once you've mastered slow speed panning, you can use it for all. You can use it with greyhounds, you can use it with kids playing in the garden, once you've mastered it, it really does have quite a dramatic impact on your pictures. I mean, this thing's doing at least 70 miles an hour. And I'm planning on following it. I'm shooting at probably a 30th of a second and at around the 85 mil setting on the lens. You can see the stitches in his clothing, but all this is just blurred. When it works really well. What I tend to do, again, I have this. You maybe have each class will have 6 to 10 riders in. Each race is 4 laps as it is with Speedway, and there'll be 5 races. So I have the potential for them going past me 20 times in the course of the day. And I want 5 or 6 saleable images from each rider to show them. So the first time they go past, I'll give maybe a 2/50th of a second. So I know I've got a fairly sharp shot. And then the next time they go past, I'll come down 125th. The next time they go past, I'll come down to a 60th, and then I'll come down to a 30th. And if I'm feeling really brave, I'll come down to a 15th. And you'll throw most of the ones at 15th away, but odd ones will really work well. This is down at around, I think this one was a 20th of a second. And what's happening here is his boot is juddering across the sand. Everything else is, I've managed to keep still, but there's different movement here, but the rest of the body is sharp. But, it's worth experimenting. See what you can, what sort of speeds you can get down to. This is one of the quads going. I look for puddles. I look for where are they gonna. If I can't get 2 riders, where can I get some action? Where is there a puddle? Where am I going to hit? This is taken for the promenade. You can do this with a 400 or 500 mil lens from where the general public are allowed. Put that in a competition and just thought it was a weird lawnmower. So, I suppose it's difficult to imagine there's 2 more wheels behind it. The grass track bikes are one of my favourites. They're just so exciting, so much noise, so much power. Most of them end up going around sideways. Or this one, he's just a little bit enthusiastic, opening the throttle, and it's threatening to throw him off. I think he's going to control it, but it's exciting movement. You're going to be watching all the time. You'll be aware, because I'm not only taking this shot, I'm thinking about how far back is the next rider. Can I pan with this, get that, turn again, and pick up the next rider around? So it used to be a pretty good, I used to have very good swiveling hips. It used to be a pretty good exercise. It's nice that there's not too much intrusive trackside stuff. This was one where we had to race on the north side of the groin, so there's even less. A way off in the distance is done with all the seals. But, great when you've got puddle. Lovely. I love the winter light or autumn winter light. It can be so dramatic. That lovely warm light. Lots of spray. Slightly slower shutter speed again. I've not used a high shutter speed to freeze the water. I've let it move and blur. Judges are going to pick on that. They go, oh, that orange boy, orange cone shouldn't be there. Well, yeah, in a perfect world, it shouldn't, but then you wouldn't know where the edge of the track was. I have to live with the fact it's there. He will buy it, he'll like it. He did buy it. In fact, he used to buy it. Him and his brother were 2 of my best customers for a number of years. The quads, yeah, it's a pity they stopped coming because they were always quite dramatic, quite fun. And a lot of them I knew, they raced on the beach, they raced on Speedway, they had quad Speedway, and they raced in the grass track as well. So I had a sort of continuous thread with some of these riders. It would be like, okay, where are you next week? Yeah, oh, you there? Yeah, I'm there. So I'd constantly taking in pictures. Last couple of beach riders. If you're paying attention, if you're prepared, you might be lucky to catch things like this happening. It's not always easy. I found many of my crash shots, I was actually on too slow a shutter speed to get a good shot, because if you're panning, you're moving at a nice constant speed with their motion, and all of a sudden they interrupt that motion and you stop moving, and now you need a high shutter speed. But this one, I had no idea what the shutter speed was. It just worked. I just realized that he's getting out of position. This is looking interesting. And I just quickly turned the dial a couple of clicks and managed to get everything sharp. And that scored a 20 fairly recently. I was quite pleased with that. And then this is what happens when you go out on the first practice lap and you haven't tried to see how deep the water is. I always thought practice is for practice. You can't win practice. There's no points for coming first in practice. But if you're the first one into a pool and it turns out to be a foot deep instead of a couple of inches deep, it kind of throws you off. And if, again, with the right timing, you can catch quite dramatic images. And I've had a few, we've had a few quite bad injuries, and not unknown to the air ambulance to turn up and carry off riders, but mostly they bounce and get up again. Okay, I think we've probably had enough motorbikes. Let's go and do something different. Let's go back on the water with another sport that I got into by accident once again. So this whole theme is I never set out to be a sports photographer, let alone become professional. One May bank holiday weekend, it was one of those really strange weekends where I hadn't got an event on. I'd go down the lake, see what's going on, and found some guys doing wakeboarding, and the guy that ran the club said, "Oh, do you want to come out in the boat?" Of course, I said yes, and so the relationship developed with the club. And I used to go down there whenever I got spare time. I would go down to the water ski lake, and I started getting commissions to shoot wakeboarding and water skiing. This was part of a shoot that I did for Tapsell Lakes. They wanted some stuff for a new brochure. And I went out on the boat, and it's never going to do any good in competition. Judges hate caravans. The first thing they're going to see in that picture is the caravans in the background. I tried it just for a laugh, and it actually scored a 20. I was amazed. I think the print I'd taken out, I think the slightly tighter crop, I'd taken out that and that, probably darkened the caravan a bit. But it was just, this guy was fairly novice, and he said, "Oh, come out and take some pictures for me." And he was doing fairly well, and I suddenly realised he's not going to recover from this trick. And as that rope slipped from his hand, his face just said everything. And I thought, there's a shot there, and banged off a few and just got that. And whereas this one did go into the brochure, that's Tatchell Castle behind, and this is the guy that first got me involved in it. He's running a wakeboard school out in America now. But they used to run competitions on a Monday night, which didn't clash with all my other things. So I started going regularly and shooting the competitions on a Monday night, and got sort of known for it. And one day, this young lady, I've forgotten her name, Marie something, she was ranked about 4th in ladies water ski. And she said, "I need some pictures for my website and brochure and sponsors and all the rest of it. You know, how much for half a day's shoot?" So arranged the price that made me happy. And I met her down at the lake for a day, half a day. And competitive water ski involves slalom ski, this what they call trick ski, and ski jumping. So she had to be able to compete in all 3 disciplines. And we met in the morning. She said, "Right, well, I'm sponsored by a swimsuit company." She said, "I've got to keep changing I need lots of different changes of swimsuit for this company. And she kept teasing us, no, I'm not putting that on, and it goes transparent. It goes transparent. She kept teasing. But at the end of the day, she put it on. I had a lot of fun with it. I think I've only got trick ski in here, but we went through all the disciplines, shooting various bits and pieces for the hottest day in June that year, and I'm spending 4 hours tearing up and down a lake in a speedboat. We're quite pretty blonde, keep changing different swimsuits, and I'm getting paid for it. You can't call it work, can you? You can't call it work. Okay, here's one from competition. In actual competition, when we're doing slalom, the only person allowed in the boat was the driver and the judge. So these are all taken from the bank, and very similar shots. I would position, I'd find a spot where they're coming towards me. They've gone round one buoy, they've gone round one turn buoy, they're angling across, ready for the next one. And they're kicking up this lovely curtain of water. And I love the shapes that you get in the water. And the expressions on their face. I mean, they're really, look at those muscles. He's really pulling hard as they make the boat's doing around 22 knots. But as they're out on the end of the rope, and as they accelerate to make the cut to the next buoy, they will go up to around 50 miles an hour. And it takes a fair degree of upper body strength to hang on to the rope. If I could get a picture that made it look as if they were really trying hard, they would buy them. Sold lots of these to the riders. Unfortunately, the only magazine that specialised in wakeboard and water ski had a policy of not paying for pictures. So they said, we don't have to, we get enough given to us. Do you want to give us some? I said, no, thank you. And that's really, now that attitude is spreading through many magazines, and it's virtually killed. I spent quite a number of years earning a good living. There's too many people giving their pictures away now. But, magazines feel they don't have to pay for them. So think twice before you give your pictures away. Us poor professionals. And I say that tongue in cheek. I'm retired now. I only do it for fun. Moving back to the last few jet ski. This is what most of the photographers that go along to jet ski, they go for this, the freestyle. It's more photogenic than the racing, because the tricks ski. And over the years, I've watched the tricks develop from barely getting off the water to these things now, which are doing multiple backflips. Needs a bit of trim. And huge amounts of air. They're getting up out of the water. And if you get a chance to go along, this one is taken. No, this one's a Bedford one. This one's a Bedford one. That one is just nip back. That's the one lakeside, Manchester, not Manchester, Doncaster lakeside. But I think they've built around it now, so I'm not sure if they'll be competing there anymore. That one's just off the A1, heading towards, going down towards Cambridge, St Ives, St Neots, whatever it is. So I'm looking for reasonable backgrounds. I know what they're going to do. I know most of the guys, the people higher up in the sport, they're going to go for big air tricks. And I know where they're going to do it. They're going to try and do it just to the left of where the judges are, so they can do this and then pull off another one and then another one and still be fairly close in front of the judges. So like anything, if you know what's going on, it allows you to put yourself in the right place, and then hopefully get a reasonably clear background. So these have worked quite nicely, and than using the high shutter speed. If you do this with a slow speed, it's not going to work because they're not moving in one direction. There's all sorts going on, so many different components of motion. This one's taken, I'm actually in the water for this one, looking up at him, going over the top. This is the same guy quite a few years earlier, actually. This is up at Stockton-on-Tees, at the Tees Barrage. We used to go racing regularly. I seem to have got a number of them. Yes, he decided to do a practice session one day. Generally speaking, they don't wear the helmets when they're actually doing the competition, which is nice for pictures. But he said, "Do you want to come out and do some stuff?" So again, I'm in the water. I'm sort of bobbing around. I can just about, the lake's about 5'6" deep. I can just about reach the bottom. And it's on a fairly wide angle, so he's quite close. Never, not managed to kill me yet. We've got fairly close a time or two. Very high shutter speed. The faster you go, the more the water droplets break up. This is 2,000 of a second. It's maybe a little over tight. I think the competition, the magazine loved it. It's just it's full of impact. This again is the same guy from in the water looking up. This young chap, he was about 12, I think, when I took this. I shot his wedding a couple of years ago, so I've known him quite a long time. Him and his friend, this is his buddy Lee. Lee again was 11, 12, something like that when he started doing freestyle competition. He looked so small on the ski there. And when he first appeared, everybody said, "Look, he's not going to amount to anything. He's too small. He's not going to be able to throw the ski out." He's now in his 7th year, I think, as professional world champion, and he makes his living building competition freestyle skis and exporting them all over the world. So he's another one that's he's turned his obsession, if you like, his hobby, what was his hobby, he's turned it into his full-time living. So another one where I'm in the water and he's performing around me. Just a slightly different viewpoint because we're taking a demonstration. And I was up on the next to the TV camera looking down, watching Lee perform. And these last 3 of him, these were taken the year he won his first British Championship, and he was still only a teenager then. He's grown a little bit since the early ones. So what's new is that? Can't read it upside down. 2003. My God, is it that far back? And this was taken not last year because there was no racing, so the year before, just before we went out to win the world title again. This trick he's doing, it's called a backflip. It's basically a loop-to-loop. Accelerates ski, launches up, does a complete 360 rotation and lands again. He's now in the Guinness Book of Record. He pulled off 36 consecutive backflips. I'm sure he didn't know which way he was up by the time he finished. He'd broken virtually every bone in his body. But he is an absolutely fantastic athlete. At least 6 times, it could be 7 times world champion. And yet it's a sport that gets no coverage. We have every year jet skiers come back from the world titles with 6 or 7 world championship titles for the different classes. It gets no coverage at all. So if you do see them performing, go along and support them. I've had a whale of a time photographing them over the years. I actually retired from professional sports photography a few years ago when I started had a couple of heart attacks. And it was time to slow down. But I still go out and do it for fun. I'm still know most of those that are involved. I have lots of happy memories. Say 20 plus years of making a living with my camera. Can't really say it worked, but I was younger then, shorter hair, probably a bit less padding as well. But that's obviously I didn't take it. But that's the sort of thing I used to get up to. If I wasn't in the water, I'd be hanging out the back of a boat, hanging over the side of a boat. I look at that now, I think, oh my God, how did you not fall in when he accelerated? Because I'm not attacked, I'm just really just leaning back into it as the engine's accelerating, trying not to fall in and drown my camera. But I survived, had a great time. Took lots of pictures that pleased judges, lots of pictures that got into magazines. I think I counted up once and it was something like 16 different magazines that published my work. So it's been wet, it's been wild, it's been great fun. I hope that there might be one or two there that you've enjoyed and perhaps picked up a few tips for next time you go out shooting sport.
Dave, thank you very much. Absolutely stunning images.
Thank you.
Yep, fabulous. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And you've been to some great places too.
It's been fun. Yeah.
Any questions, anybody?
Very hard to get into some of these events then and take a camera, or do they prefer you not to?
Turning my sound up, so I'm sorry. I didn't catch most of that because all those engines, I'm deaf.
Me too. How hard is it, or how easy is it to get into some of these venues to do the photography?
The jet skiing, it's absolutely easy. There's not even, most places, there's not even an admission charge.
All right.
If it's on at a lake near you, just turn up. If you want to know where they're racing, just Google JSRA, Jet Sport Racing Association, and their website will tell you what the program is. I think JSRA.org it is. The first race of this season is very soon, but I think I'm right in saying it's not open to the public this month, but hopefully, as I say, grass track opened last weekend. So the things are starting to open up. So grass track, you pay the admission. You can't get track centre, but you know some of those that I showed you, the last shot that was taken from over the fence from amongst the spectators. So that to do, the jet ski is easy to do. You know, the public can go pretty much anywhere around.
No, the images are just so bright and colourful. They look great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the freestyle is usually at lunchtime.
Right.
It started off 25 years ago. It was a lunchtime entertainment. 2 or 3 people would just go out and fool around on the scooters, and it's now become a huge international sport.
Yeah.
There's an event on the 17th and 18th of July at Brands Burton.
Yes, I'm not sure if that one's open. I think they hoped if things had opened up on the 21st of June, then I think they would have been allowing spectators in. But at the moment, you may need to check that, whether it's going to be open to spectators. But it's quite a good lake. The access is, you've got access around 2 sides of it. Last time I was there.
That's round 2. Round 3 is in Bedford, and round 4 is Sutton Coldfield. Yeah.
I don't know the Sutton one. That's a fairly new venue. The Bedford Lake, Willen Lakes, is it? Something like that.
It says Kingsbury Jet Ski Centre. I don't know.
Oh, Kingsbury, that's Birmingham.
Yeah, but well, Sutton Coldfield isn't that far away, is it?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Sorry, I was. Yeah. Yes, it says there. Parking is not easy. the car park towards the jet ski end gets full very quickly. But there are, if you can find a place to park, then access for photography. You've only got one bank you can get down, but it is it's very popular with photographers. Yeah.
Have to look out.
Yeah, that sounds good. Any more questions, anybody? No?
Just say how enjoyable seeing your pictures was. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic pictures, Dave.
On behalf of the club, David, can I say thank you very much? Some great images and some good technical advice for us. So I think it's a smashing talk, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure to share them with you.
It was fabulous, David. Okay, everybody.